Okay to kick off, Laura? Yeah. Right, good morning, everybody. My name's Stuart McGibbon from the North East Automotive Alliance. I'm a project manager. And a couple of points before we start. First, the session is being recorded. I hope everybody is okay with that. It's part of, we try to improve things, so it's good to get a recording and we can analyse it afterwards. Second point is welcome to this first event. It's a first event of a two-part series, and we're looking at what's happening with energy, which is a really big subject at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty that affects markets. We'll be talking about that. So we're going to share what is the current energy landscape. We've got Adam Brown from Great Annual Savings, our energy partner. He'll also cover other services offered to members. In the spirit of influencing what we can influence, because we're going to find out about what we can't influence, but if we can influence things, Richard Jennings from TDJ Services, another NEAA member, he's going to share some top tips for saving energy using the ABC approach of analysis, behaviour and control. I'll wrap up on what we can do with regard to supporting members going forward from this. We'll leave time at the end, hopefully about 15 minutes for a Q&A, but please, obviously, you can put things in the chat if you want to, if it's in your head and you want to get it out your head for when we do the Q&A, but if you can leave the Q&A to the end. But please remember that it's normally NEAA style, it's relaxed, an informative session, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. So I'll now hand you over to Adam Brown from Great Annual Savings. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone. Right, so I think what I'll do is I'll just kind of ask you to skip through. Laura's in control of the slides here, so I'll just ask Laura to skip through when the time's right. So my name's Adam Brown. My job role is Group Marketing Manager for Great Annual Savings Group. And I'm going to run you through today, really, what's going on with the energy market at the moment. And I completed this presentation at about 3 o'clock yesterday. It's already changed again since then. So a big caveat at the beginning that this changes on a daily basis, especially at the moment. Everything that's in here is completely correct, despite the changes today, but the changes that have happened this morning do illustrate some of the points I'm making. So I'll cover those off when the time's right. First of all, thank you for coming along. I think energy was already a key factor in expenditure for a lot of NEAA members, but I think that's probably grown and getting even bigger as time goes on. So if we can probably move on to my first slide, I'll explain what that is, Laura, please. So I've always put this slide up. I think I've probably done 8, 9, 10 presentations kind of this nature with NEAA over the last 4 years or so that Great Annual Savings have been working with them. And I've put kind of different variations of this slide up. And the point of the analogy I'm always trying to make is it's a jungle out there, and in the energy market, and Great Annual Savings Group can help you avoid the various pitfalls and traps that exist within business energy. Unfortunately, I think the most modern version of this slide comes with a bit of a statement that it's more along the lines of which trap is least painful to fall in, and we can help you decide which one that is. I think a lot of people that are kind of, especially as a result of the pandemic, finding themselves with various charges, bills, and obligations that they must fulfill, that they haven't been because simply they haven't been consuming energy in the way that they normally have. Many of them seem unfair, many of them seem unjust, but a lot of them are kind of written into law and written into legislation that comes along with your energy contract and comes along with the way that the UK is trying to move its energy infrastructure. And I'll cover a little bit of that in the next couple of slides after this one. Just a little bit on us. I think the majority of people will have heard of us probably via the NEAA, who are in today, but just in case anyone hasn't, a really quick whistle stop of who Great Annual Savings are. We started in 2012, primarily as an energy broker at the time. Probably within 3 or 4 years, we were one of the North East's biggest, and we expanded out from being an energy broker to be a cost savings specialist. We now operate in 13 different markets, business expenditure markets, including things like water as well as energy, gas, electricity. We also work in things like waste collection, which is relevant to NEAA members, especially the manufacturers. We also do things like telecoms, broadband, a few of those electronic payments. We work with a few partners in the electric vehicle charging points industry, which is booming at the moment, or certainly had been before the Russia and Ukraine situation, which is something I'll be touching on quite a bit today. Or you may have just heard of Great Annual Savings via our logo being slapped on the front of the Sunderland shirts, which, as a Sunderland supporter myself, was a really proud moment. It was great to be involved in seeing the new Sunderland kits before anyone else, because we had to sign off how our logo looked on the shirt. So I thoroughly enjoyed that myself. So apologies, or no apologies, in fact, to any Newcastle fans who were in listening. But that's a quick whistle stop tour of who we are, where you might have heard of us. And I'll move on now to talking about how your energy bills are made up, how the market influences that, the UK's energy infrastructure, what's going on at the moment, and what you can do, and some best practice tips to think about. As I mentioned in the previous slide there, you will fall into some kind of trap or pitfall. I think at the moment, the way things are, it's about selecting which route you go down, which is the least painful, most effective for yourselves, and where you can mitigate and control the things you can control, to deal with the current situation in the energy market, which is fairly dire. So I've removed the exact percentages off this pie chart because they change on such a regular basis, but this does illustrate pretty much, this is from 2021, this does illustrate pretty much how your energy bill is made up. So supply management costs, that's kind of the profit or the part of your bill that is put in there by your energy supplier, whoever that may be, your Total Gas and Power, your ENGIE, your EDF, your Scotch Power, whoever that may be. The green bit is your taxes and levies. I've just seen a pop up there from Julian. Yep, we will absolutely share these slides after the meeting. There's nothing in there that can't be shared. The green bit's your taxes and levies. These are applied by the government. And the purple bit is your system and network costs. So these are the costs associated with loss of energy, the distribution and the transport of energy around the UK infrastructure. This is essentially paying for the infrastructure of getting energy into the country and then out to businesses and out to regions, and including out to consumers as well, although that doesn't go into your energy bill for a business. So the red bit is the wholesale commodity costs, and that's the bit that's going absolutely haywire at the moment. Really, the general increase over the last 8 to 10 years has been in the non-commodity stuff. So increases in levies, increases in things that you've got to pay that are put in there by the government. And this can be kind of scrutinised and debated with government, Ofgem, and the various different people involved in the energy sector and setting business energy rates in the post-COVID world. However, the wholesale price is something they don't really have all that much control over. And that's the bit at the moment that really is affecting us as a result of COVID, and also mainly now as a result of the conflict in Ukraine. So for my next slide, please, Laura. So this is a very simplistic overview and structure of what the UK energy market looks like. So from generation all the way through to yourselves at the end, you are consumers and or businesses. So suppliers sit somewhere in between generation and transmission on this diagram. So your energy is generated. Some suppliers generate their own energy, electricity and gas. Some just buy and sell it. And those who just buy and sell it are the ones who really have struggled massively during the pandemic, because they can't buy it at a rate and sell it competitively enough. And so their businesses become insolvent or unviable. And that's why we lost approximately 50% of UK energy suppliers over 2021. It really was an absolute Armageddon within the energy industry. And it's somehow, although for slightly different ways, gone even more volatile over the last couple of months, and we're going to go into that now. So suppliers sit between generation and transmission. It's then transmitted across the UK via our national infrastructure to local areas or DNOs, district network operators. Ours is Northern Gas Networks or Northern Power Grid, and those are the distribution centres, and they then distribute it out to your consumers, to your businesses via local levels of infrastructure. So that's really all I need to say on that side, just to explain how it works, and then hopefully that gives a little bit of context for the rest of this presentation. So next slide, please, Laura. There's been a lot of doom and gloom around the consumer market at the moment, particularly the price caps being raised from, I think it was £1,200 roughly up to £1,900. This is for your households we're talking about here, not businesses. And comparison sites like Compare the Market, Uswitch, Money Supermarket have all taken massive hits because there's not really much to compare anymore. A lot of people were sitting on out of contract or deemed rates, as they are known. And people have been sitting on them for a while now because you can't really get a contract any cheaper than them unless you can negotiate it quite a while back. I think there's actually talk at the moment of that price cap being lifted further, which is pretty scary. I saw one estimate from a think tank within the energy industry last week who was estimating that the price cap could go as high as £3,000 by the end of 2023. So that's a pretty scary scenario, really. The price of energy to households could almost triple within 2 years, which is just astronomical, really. And all of these things you kind of hear just sound a little bit scaremongery, and it is based on a moment in time. So it's quite often a case of this is how things are at the moment. If it continues this way, that's where it will get to. But that's not what volatility means, and it's quite often that things don't reach that stage. Again, that's a theme that will come into further slides later on in my presentation, and I'll explain when we reach that. The key point from this slide I wanted to make was there is no price cap for businesses. I think the last time I delivered a session it was back in November, and it was just on the beginnings of the energy price crisis, really, it's certainly got worse since then, thanks to Mr. Putin. And there was a question of why are people like Uswitch telling us not to switch at the moment, and the reason is because in the consumer market there's a price cap, in the business market there isn't. So you're still absolutely better off being in a contract if you can get one in the business market at present. Next slide, please, Laura. So this is a short explanation of our situation in the UK, just on a local basis, with regards to our energy market, our energy infrastructure. So what we've got in place physically is aging in the UK, and it's in the middle of an improvement plan. It's certainly not an issue that's going to cause us too much problems long term, but in the short term we're not operating at full capacity. We have a net import status, i.e. we import more energy than we export. Around roughly 35% of our energy is imported, as I've said there. We are sensitive to the energy market in Europe, not necessarily on Russia, but Russia, as I'll explain later, does affect Europe. So the situation in Russia is heavily affecting the energy prices available in the UK. We have almost entirely removed coal from our generation mix, which is pretty impressive in terms of our carbon goals and where we want to get to as a country in regards to how we generate our electricity. However, it has left a big hole that renewables aren't yet filling. I think if we're all being positive, we'd like to think that renewables get to a stage where they will do that, but they're just not yet efficient enough and not yet in great enough numbers to plug the gap that coal has left. And that does leave us a little bit sensitive to outside pressures, more so than we were when we had coal to rely on. Coal is now under 2%. I think it's something like 1.8% of our electricity generation is done through coal, and all the coal fire stations are now in the process of being removed. In comparison to France, we have relatively low nuclear capacity, and also our nuclear stations again are old, aging, and running at less than 5 gigawatts of output when they are supposedly an 8 gigawatt capacity system. So that's not great. We have a standalone carbon market, which means we can't trade our carbon responsibilities with the EU. That's not as a result of Brexit. That's been like that for quite a while. And also our storage capacity. While our storage capacity as a percentage is currently higher than the rest of Europe, i.e. it looks like we've got a higher percentage of our storage full than the rest of Europe do, our storage is considerably smaller than Europe. And the UK government strategically uses Europe as an extended piece of storage. However, that doesn't take into account current market conditions, and we can't really use that because everyone else is low on storage as well. So our storage is going to deplete a lot faster, and has been depleting and being refilled a lot faster than the rest of Europe is. Next slide, please, Laura. So the market as a whole, I've just kind of explained some of the limitations of our system in the UK, which is by no means not fit for purpose, but it is certainly in need of modernisation. So that's then been weathering a storm really for the last year and a half, which has been compounded with the conflict in Russia and the gas price crisis. So in 2020, we really didn't generate enough renewable electricity. It's certainly been windy recently, so I'm sure we've been doing a little bit at the moment, which is good. And that kind of hit storage levels. Likewise, increased demand of economies driving out of COVID, especially in Southeast Asia, is reducing the importance of Europe to Russia's supplies of gas. They're sending more east than they have done previously, and suddenly the European market isn't as important to Russia as it used to be. So there's increased demand for liquid natural gas. In 2020/21, the cold winter depleted storage levels across Europe, including ourselves, and as I've already mentioned, our storage isn't the best. And obviously now the main factor driving gas prices through the roof is complications in Eastern Europe, and I'll go into the detail of that in the incoming slides. Just this morning, gas prices on the wholesale market have risen 30%. And I think, is it my next slide or the one after explains why that's important? No, I've got a couple of graphs to show you first. So next slide, please. This is going to be the wholesale gas market, 21 versus 22. This is from an internal document that we share across the business and share with some of our larger consumers as well on a regular basis. This shows you the red bars obviously are the gas prices in 2021. The green bars are the average gas prices in 2022. So as you can see, November, kind of October to December, really 2021 was an absolute disaster zone. This is before the conflict in Ukraine even started. So it improved slightly when we came back from our Christmas break in January, and we thought, yeah, things are heading in the right direction. However, Ukraine now is really, the Ukraine situation is now really affecting that, and I dread to think what March's is going to look like, what March's bar is going to look like. So at the moment, as you can see, the gas price crisis is absolutely continuing, although it's not quite as bad as it was in December, which was more COVID affected than January was, and then February isn't quite as COVID affected again. The most important thing I think to take from that is compare 2021 to 2022 on the January bar there. You're talking more than 3 times the price, almost 4 times the price on the wholesale market, and I think that will go up again. I would imagine during March or April. So next slide. And that's the equivalent in electricity power. Not quite as stark a difference from 21 to 22, although you can absolutely see that it's significantly more expensive on the wholesale market during January and February than it was this time last year. Okay. Next slide. So this slide comes with a double, triple, quadruple asterisk over it. This is the one that I made yesterday afternoon. And this changes absolutely on a daily basis. And the good thing is it illustrates the point I'm about to make, so it didn't change the opposite direction, which I'm pleased about. This captures a moment in time, this graph. That moment in time was yesterday afternoon. What this graph shows is a pricing curve from a supplier, an energy supplier, which I've anonymized. That shows the price per therm, so not the price per kilowatt hour, so don't apply to your own bills. This is price per therm, which is what most of the markets are priced in and illustrate in. That shows the price that an energy supplier would offer a consumer from March 22 all the way through to what they call end of curve, July 24. So that's as far out as that you can price with an energy supplier at present, or as was the case yesterday. The encouraging thing I'm sure everyone's picked up there is that it's a trend going downwards. Yes, that is the view of the supplier, that energy should be cheaper in July 24 than it is in March 22. What I do need to point out is that is a moment in time. Today, that graph will be higher in July 24 than it is then. Today, that graph will be higher in July 23 than it is then. I would imagine there'll still be a generic downward trend, because I think we would all hope that come July 23, July 24, the conflict in Eastern Europe isn't going the way it is at the moment. So what I'm trying to illustrate really is here, it's not unrealistic to look ahead at your energy costs despite what's going on at the moment. In fact, it's advisable to be looking ahead despite what's going on at the moment in the world. What that means is I'll come on to I think I've got a slide later on stacked contracts, which is a new thing that we're having some success with the great annual savings. What we're doing quite often with people who need to engage in the energy market and need an energy contract at the moment is putting them in a 12-month contract with an agreement in place with a supplier for a consecutive contract starting the day after that contract ends, which starts in, for example, January 23, which will be on reduced rates. So instead of putting yourself in a long-term 3, 4, 5-year deal where you'll be on March 2022 rates for 3, 4, 5 years, which I don't think anyone wants, what you're doing is renegotiating, is taking advantage of more preferential rates with suppliers by putting contracts in place now on today's prices to start in June, July 2023, January 2023, whenever that may be, and taking advantage of the suppliers' point in time pricing for that year. As today's illustrated, 30% jump in the gas market this morning, the prices on that graph will be higher again today. And we have one customer, obviously I won't name the customer, we had a customer we're working with at the moment who were advised to do this and have cost themselves £500,000 but by not making that jump at the time and saying, well, if the energy market looks like it's going down, why don't I just take that price when at that time it might have gone down even further. I think that's a very, very risky strategy, and one where unfortunately the pricing specialist who provided me this information yesterday has been proved right, and it's costing businesses money by not taking control of situations when they should. And that's not to say everyone should go out right now and get themselves an energy contract. It's to say everyone should go out right now and consider what their options are and make sure that they're on top of this and exploring this as a potential resolution for what's going on at the moment. So that's my kind of first tip to go away with today. Take a look at the future curves for pricing from suppliers, and is it worth locking in at a price that you know wouldn't be too painful for yourself right now to mitigate the risk of that price going higher. So that's kind of the first tip I think people should take away, and it's one that really only came into my consciousness over the last few days, thanks to a session I had yesterday with some of the pricing specialists who are looking at the market on a day-to-day basis at the moment. And another good example on the next slide of this is today's situation. This slide I built on Monday, and at that point in time, if we had a customer come to us and say, I need a new energy contract next week, please, this is the situation they faced. So these are 6 of the most prolific energy business, B2B energy suppliers in the UK. Engie would not offer a contract. Total Energies would not offer a contract, and actually weren't honouring previous contracts that hadn't been signed yet that they'd sent out. Smartest Energy, you can't get a contract. Npower had suspended all activity. Drax, who have replaced Haven, no pricing available, and Gazprom, obviously no pricing available with Gazprom. That changed, and they all came back online yesterday, and were available for pricing first thing this morning, the vast majority of them, apart from Gazprom. As I speak to you now, every single one of them has again pulled price books because of the jump in the gas market. So if you came to me now and went, I need a gas contract, we couldn't get you one today, or we couldn't get you one this moment in time. We'd have to stay in touch, work really closely, and work very quickly when pricing became available today to get you put in one. We have seen suggestions. I think it's very likely that Gazprom will exit the UK market for obvious reasons, whether it's a license that's been revoked or whether they're literally just having their assets frozen by the government. Gazprom, who operate in the UK and in the UK business market, are a subsidiary. They're not exactly the Gazprom that exists in Russia. However, their entire itinerary comes through that company, and sanctions placed on that company mean that Gazprom's position in the UK is practically untenable. What that means for your current contracts will have to be guided by Ofgem and will be released, I'm sure, when some news emerges on what's going to happen to Gazprom. So if you're with Gazprom at the moment, I think the most likely thing to happen, although this isn't guaranteed, I think the most likely thing to happen is your current contract will be allowed to run as is, and you will not be able to renew with Gazprom. I think that's the most likely thing, and what would cause the least amount of disruption within the UK business energy market. Another possibility is your contract is ended as of today and you need to get yourself a new one. if you'd negotiated that contract 12, 16, 18 months ago, that's bad news. And I would absolutely say that if that happens, get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do, and we'll see what suppliers have strategies for Gazprom customers in place, and we'll see where we could potentially place you or advise you to move your energy contracts to if that was the situation. But like I say, I think the most likely thing and the least disruptive thing to happen would be for Gazprom contracts to be allowed to expire as is. We've also interestingly had customers contact us who do have Gazprom contracts and asked us to get out of them. Can we cancel our Gazprom contract on ethical grounds? We do not want to be sending any money there, which is obviously, I'd say, completely understandable. We're seeing what we can do for those customers, but it all depends on what the government decides to do with Gazprom. Next slide, please. So why am I talking mainly about gas? Why is gas important, so important to the UK? Main reason is all our electricity, or 35 to 40% of our electricity, and 2019 is on there because 2020 was obviously affected by the pandemic heavily. I'd say roughly 40% of our electricity comes from gas. So we use gas to power stations and generate electricity. It's the primary source for generating electricity in the UK. As I mentioned earlier, coal under 2% now. Other renewables, kind of wind and solar, is up to 28%, which is good news. Hydro 2.2%, good news. Other renewables 12%. That's great news. You're talking, you know, a third of our energy now is coming from renewable sources. That's really, well, sorry, a third of our electricity is coming from renewable sources, which is good news. The problem is they're not reliable enough. There's not enough of them, and our ability to expand that at the moment is limited. So it's a very key, and I think those also allow the UK to be more independent from Europe and more independent from price volatility and market volatility that we're seeing at the moment. So I think it's really important that that we do get to a place where renewables are more reliable and to take up more of our more of that pie chart there. And I think nuclear is while obviously it has that stigmatism around it, nuclear, I think it's really important for nuclear to become a growing part of our energy mix, because it is more reliable than renewables. Doesn't sound it, but it is low carbon, believe it or not. So yeah, I think that's important, and I wanted to share that information with you, so you understand why gas is so important at the moment. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share that graph as well. I've already explained that we're a net importer of all main fuel types, but you can see there how much we export versus how much we import, and the split between pipeline and liquid natural gas on there. And then obviously that bar is the top bar minus that line, sorry, is the top bar minus the bottom bar, so you can see our net import position there as well. Next slide, please. I feel like Professor Chris Whitty here saying next slide, please, all the time. So this is an important one, something perhaps people might not have known. You'll have seen Nord Stream 2 mentioned in the news recently, because it has been blocked and as a sanction by Germany. A further development this morning was that the Nord Stream 2 company, which was kind of funded and owned by various energy suppliers, including majority by Gazprom and Russia, has filed for insolvency. So that company, they've officially given up on making Nord Stream 2 happen. The daft thing about that is the pipeline exists. So there are now 2 pipelines through the Baltic Sea, but the second one will never be used. So why Nord Stream 2 is important? You can see the 3 black circles there. I've highlighted Nord Stream at the top, the pipeline going through Belarus, the second, and at the bottom, the 2 pipelines going through the Ukraine. So you're not supposed to say the Ukraine. And that's why Nord Stream 2 was so important. Russia wanted to increase what was going through Nord Stream and decrease what was going through Ukraine, because these are all Russian pipelines that we're talking about here. They wanted to decrease what's going through Ukraine because it would weaken their economy and weaken their standing within Europe. So that's what they wanted to do. So Nord Stream 2, which was a controversial development for that reason, has been getting built over for the last kind of 3 or 4 years, and is practically the version at the stage where it needs to be turned on. Europe and specifically the USA have waded into that argument and have kind of objected to it existing for the reasons we've just said about weakening Ukraine. Germany, where the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 pipelines enter Europe, have used that as a major sanction against Russia and said, you will never open this pipeline now, we're stopping you from doing that, full stop, it's coming into our country, we can stop that happening, which means that the gas still needs to go through Ukraine and Belarus as much as it was before. And that's a major blow to Russia because of what they wanted to do strategically with their resources. It also means there is less gas coming into Europe, and it also has a major effect on the gas price, as we will cover in the next slide, please, Laura. Less gas coming into Europe means less supply. Less suppliers being in the market as a result of COVID or as a result of Gazprom, we're going to be a heavy casualty soon, means less competition. More demand is in existence than it was over the last 2 years as people develop and trying to drive, like economies try to drive out of COVID. And what that means altogether is obviously prices rise, and we're seeing massive volatility on a daily basis at the moment. Got 3 slides left. The next one, please, Laura, is something that we did with the NEAA. It was a really interesting exercise that Stuart conducted. It was in 2020, but the numbers are completely relevant still, despite them not being completely accurate now. What this shows is the starting point before this crisis started, and this percentage is was taken from international NEAA manufacturer members and where their energy price compares to the same company or subsidiaries of that company elsewhere in the world. So where the idea of this exercise was to determine how much of a factor that energy prices were having on the competitiveness of UK automotive manufacturers. And what this showed was the UK one of the most expensive. Also what this shows, the things that stand out on this to me, firstly is Germany. They were starting at a worse position than us. Germany are also 40% reliant on Russian gas in their electricity generation, so they're in a much worse position than the UK are at present. I haven't got the numbers with me, but I imagine their energy prices are a lot higher than ours. And also, back in December, Germany were releasing national adverts and national communications from the government what to do if the government ran out of energy. So they were sending out blackout information to households because they were that concerned at their energy situation. So as bad as it is for us, it's a lot worse for Germany at the moment. The other one I want to point out is France. France are pretty low down. They are a net exporter of energy, so you can see how their position differs to the UK, who's a net importer. And they're essentially at that time their energy prices were half of ours, and that's a massive advantage, I think, to certainly automotive manufacturers in France. Next slide, please. So what's the magic bullet? What we're going to do about this? Where do we go from here? I'm sorry to say there's no simple answer. Every business is different, is the first reason. There's 1 million+ UK businesses and each have different profiles with regards to their energy usage and their requirements. There isn't a cheat sheet that we can simply apply to this as there has been in the past with energy markets. I think the best thing to do with regards to procurement is to limit the necessity to engage with the market, which has been volatile for years, and spread risk by using longer term contracts in a method I've described earlier. So I think the best thing, the number one tip here is to address your contracts in advance. Look at your situation. When do they expire? What can you do with regards to advanced procurement to try and mitigate the future impacts? Take each day as a moment in time. Perhaps watch the market for a week, the wholesale price of gas, and see what it does each day. You can see those figures by simple Google. Do a mini version of what we do and just see. Imagine I'd bought today. Look at the market tomorrow. Look at the market in 3 days' time. What kind of trends can I see? I would imagine the market will be going up, although it does go up and down on a daily basis. I would imagine the overall trend would be the market's going up. Does that mean then that now is it's a good safe bet or safer bet to purchase in advance my energy for 2023? Is that something that we should be doing? And if you don't feel comfortable making those decisions, we are available to speak to. We are a no obligation service. We are free. We offer free advice. And I do think now is a good time to use that, and it's something that the NEAA wanted to put in place before any of this happened, but it's kind of coming to a point now where I think it's really important that people do consider this stuff, because when you're talking about energy prices trebling, quadrupling, then that does have a major impact, especially on heavy manufacturing. And my last slide, please, Laura. Those are 5 of our other 13 services that I mentioned. Other things that I think could be applicable to the NEAA is specifically energy management, which is represented by that icon on the right. We've got water, business waste, telecoms, business insurance, and energy management on there. So for energy management, capital expenditure projects are probably less attractive than ever due to COVID and obviously other pressures affecting cash flow. Potentially the most prudent investment could be a high quality monitoring and targeting system for larger consumers. I think most large consumers will have one already, but to what extent is it used? What level of expertise is applied to it? And how quality is the system? Because you can get them pretty cheap and pretty easily, but do they tell you what you need to know? What level of granularity do they give you? Do they tell you to every single room in your building what was used? Are they a half hourly? Are they an hourly? Are they a half daily? Do they tell you what you need to know in order to make informed decisions? Who looks at that? Is it a qualified person, etc.? So yeah, definitely the second tip for this is to take away is to speak to your energy management people and the people responsible, certain to larger consumers, for your energy management systems and your monitoring targeting systems. What are they doing about it? What are they seeing? And where could you improve that? I think often larger consumers can work a system into their energy procurement deal as well. If that's something that you're looking to do to get a free system in future, then speak to us, because we can help you do that through a supplier. If you think your system's not up to scratch or you don't have one, then this can be worked into your energy procurement deal as a freebie, not as an extra cost. And obviously make sure all of your alerts and spikes are all set so that if something happens, you're alerted to it and it doesn't rely on discovering it 3 days later on a routine check. And the other one I wanted to mention was water. Water's a lot cheaper than electricity, so the savings are a lot smaller. However, the percentage of bills available to be saved is a lot higher than electricity, so it's certainly something that should be looked at and considered. We can routinely find 35 to 40% savings on business water versus current spend, so not even versus renewal. So it's absolutely something people should be looking at, and especially if you use a lot of water, we can be saving you high percentages by working with us on that. And we can also look at backdating, look at rebates through bills for stuff that potentially you're paying with, such as wastewater, surface water charges that you may or may not need depending on changes to your business. Or if you've ever even looked at that, you may have come into a building where they'd had a wastewater and surface water charge applied to it, never looked at that element of your bill. We could potentially not only eradicate that from the future in a new contract, but also we could potentially get you a rebate by looking at what you should and shouldn't be paying. So yes, that is my 3 tips. Look at your water and your energy management, and look at potential future advanced procurement as well. Just look at the market over the next few days, the wholesale market, and start making decisions on whether you think that you could benefit from buying some energy now before things potentially get worse, or just a conversation with perhaps one of our pricing people who are absolutely frazzled to death at the moment, looking at this every day and thinking about every which way this could possibly go to advise our customers in the best way. So thank you very much for your time. Hopefully that hasn't depressed you too much. Obviously my demeanor is probably not the best at the moment, having dealing with this on a daily basis. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to share it with you, and thank you very much for your time.
Adam, thanks very much. I think we're from a time perspective, we are overrunning. Having said that, it's really important to listen to what Adam said there, to understand the current condition. That's what we're talking about today. Where are we? So I think if everybody's okay, we'll probably wait overrun. I don't want to rush Richard because he's got some good top tips. So if everybody can stay on for a little bit longer, that would be really appreciated. I don't want you to miss out. The only thing I would say about Adam's presentation is I found more out there from Adam than I have in the media, in the news. It's a lovely summary of where we are. So I thank you very much for that, Adam, and really appreciate your support. And we'll hand over to Richard now. And Richard, hopefully that's give you a bit of breathing space so you can, do what you need to do. Okay?
Yep. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I can run through this fairly quick so that we can stay roughly on time.
Well, as I say, flexibility. We've got, don't miss the key issues.
No, that's fine.
Cheers.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Richard Jennings. Yeah, if you can move to the next slide, Laura, please. Hang on, what's going on there? That's not the right slides. No, hang on, what's happening there? Is that that's not the ones I sent this morning, Laura?
Let me have a look.
Or I've accidentally sent the wrong ones.
I think they're the ones I got this morning.
I just share my
You can just share your screen if you like.
yeah, 2 seconds, everyone. Right, can everyone see that?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. Right, so yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Richard Jennings. I work for TDJ Services. We're an independent energy consultancy. Provide a variety of different services from ESOS audits, streamlined energy carbon reporting verification, ISO 50001 implementation, a part-time energy management service. So yeah, lots of different energy services. So I'm here this morning to talk about what I call the ABC approach, and where A is analysis, B is behavior, and C is control. And this is quite a high level sort of way of looking at things. And for the purpose of this, I'm going to use an example of basically a domestic situation, because I know that all your businesses are different, but the principles are the same regardless. So start a bit about face, and we start with the control side. So in your own houses, you could, for example, replace an old non-condensing boiler with a new condensing boiler, and you would make savings. However, any equipment, regardless of if it's either old or new, is inherently inefficient if it's not controlled properly. And that's one of the key things whenever it comes to energy management is control. So in this example, if you put a new boiler in place, you would expect that you would have a time clock to make sure that it's only operating when required. And you'd also expect that you'd have a thermostat so that when your desired temperature is reached, that the boiler switches off. So that's the first stage of making sure things are efficient, is having those controls in place. However, just having controls isn't the complete solution. It also depends on behavior. And controls only work well if they are set correctly and not tampered with. And this is something I see on countless audits across countless different sites. People put controls in, but then they forget about them. So you set the time clock to the occupancy hours of your building, but things change. And especially with the pandemic, working hours have changed, shift patterns have changed, but people never go back and check that these controls are still set to match what's actually happening on site. I deal with another company at the moment, and they have a night shift that gets put on occasionally and then gets taken off. They will change the building management system to account for the night shift being put on, but then what generally happens is they then forget to put the system back to its original settings. So they end up with their building being heated overnight when no one's on site. So with controls, it's not always fit and forget. It's a case of having to go back to them and regularly check in that things like your time clocks match the hours, the thermostat, which experience shows me that people, especially in offices, are very keen on adjusting up and down. And all over the place. So again, it's making sure that once you've set the controls up, are they still relevant? Do they still match your requirements? And not just to think that, yeah, we set them a year ago and that situation is still okay. How do you know all these controls are working? And this is where the analysis part comes in. That once you've got your controls in place, once you've got your behavior set so that the controls are checked on a regular basis and are not tampered with, then the next part is the analysis. It's making sure that you understand your energy consumption, you analyze your energy consumption, as Adam's just gone through, and by doing that, you would highlight any abnormal usage, which might be as a result of controls not matching what's happening on your site. Again, I've come across lots of examples of this over the years. So I've done audits, and especially with the pandemic, I've did an audit of an office where everyone had been working from home. When I went around the site, what I found was that the air conditioning system had been set to come on in the morning, switch off at night, which is great, except that no one was there because everyone was working from home. And no one had thought over a period of 6 months that they should have gone round and switched all these systems off. Other examples of where controls can go wrong if you're not careful. Again, I did an audit of an office building. I went up to site. I was due to do 3 buildings. And when I got to see the facilities manager there, he said, I don't understand why you're doing this building because we haven't been in it for a year. And then I said, well, how come your energy consumption is 3/4 of your other offices that are occupied? And when I went round and did an audit of the site, the reason why was all their lights were on occupancy sensors. So because the site was unoccupied, they had a 24-hour security guard who would go around and walk around the site, checking that everything was okay. However, as he walked around the site, he'd be triggering every occupancy sensor. So all the lights were coming on. They'd then stay on for, in some cases, some of the lights were set to stay on for up to an hour. An hour later, again, security guard does his walk around and triggers all the lights. So controls are great, but you do need to make sure that they do what you're expecting them to do. And that is where the behavior and the analysis part of this comes in. So that's a very simplistic view of looking at energy management on site. How do you ensure how do you ensure this approach is followed? For me, one of the key things companies can do is to look at implementing an energy management system. An energy management system sets the framework to ensure that energy management is embodied into the company culture. And that, for me, is key. Because this then helps you ensure that controls are set correctly, that employees have awareness of how their behavior can affect energy consumption, and that data is regularly analysed to highlight abnormal usage. Now, it depends on your company and the size of the company. For those that are affected by the ESOS legislation, Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme, having an energy management system that's certified to ISO 50001 is a way of complying with ESOS. For smaller companies, you might not want to go down the route of certification, but it still doesn't stop you putting in an energy management system to try and embed energy management into your company culture. And it's important because I see this a lot of times where companies have high energy costs, so they do energy audits, they identify some savings, some opportunities, and their energy costs go down. But then after a while, And it's understandable because there's a lot of different pressures on businesses. Those costs, they think they're under control, so energy management gets pushed to the back again and gets forgot about. And the costs slowly increase again till they get high, and then it's, yep, let's do audits again. And that process just repeats. You end up on this roller coaster of managing your energy, then not managing it, and then managing it again. Whereas I'm a strong believer that once you put in an energy management system and you integrate it into the company culture, and you get that commitment to energy management from your directors all the way down to your shop floor, that you get those savings and you keep going, getting those savings. And it is literally, in a lot of cases, just chipping away. It's marginal gains, but they do make a difference over time. So thank you all for listening for that, and I will now stop sharing.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Richard. We've got a wrap-up slide, Laura. I think.
Yeah, just bear with me.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. Okay, so I just wanted to finish the slides. Firstly, apologies for overrunning, but I think it's really important to make sure that there's a lot of information here, and it will be doing this session again, I think. But how can we support members? So the first thing is we've got an energy group, and that's got some converts in it, and it's, some of the people on our energy group are here today. That's my support, and it is excellent support I get off Paul Blanchard at Komatsu. He chairs the group from a member's perspective. Anybody can join the group. The only caveat I would say is obviously I would have an internal discussion with myself and Paul to look at the value add proposition. And on the subject of value add, if anybody has got any value add ideas, best practice, you can always come in from an energy subject perspective, come in and present that to us, and we'll happily listen to what you've got to say. The other thing is we're also very happy to have a look at best practice and see it, because that's the best way. It's all right sitting in the garage here and talking about energy, but actually going out on the shop floor and seeing something that's working is the best way to learn, in my opinion. And I think we as we're coming out of COVID, we can do more of that. So if anybody's got anything on energy that they would like to discuss or share, that's fine. We'd have a look at that. But I think there's one more slide, I believe, Laura. Yeah, so these are some of the things that we've been looking at as an energy group. I'm not going to read them out for you, but these are the things that we've looked at. So we have got knowledge on this kind of activity, both within our own membership and people who've actually done it. So, but I will stress that it's about understanding the current condition before you do anything. We have our next event on the 17th of March. So you put that in your diary from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And we've got Paul Blanchard from Komatsu, who'll be talking about transferable best practice, Kasai, who'll be talking about energy monitoring, and our friend Adam, who should be on the television, by the way, he's going to be discussing how to read your bill. So that was the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank the presenters. We can open it up for any questions now, anything at all that you've took on board, and I'm just going to open the virtual floor to questions. And don't be shy. There's no such thing as a daft question.
Everyone's shy.
I don't know whether they're shy or you've explained it all that well that nobody's got any questions at all.
just addressing the question that came in from Julian about the slides, obviously we'll share those with you all afterwards. And then also, as we've recorded this, then obviously we can make that available if you want to share that amongst any of your team members as well.
Yeah, if anybody's got anything they do want to ask, then they don't want to do it in this